Hey guys, welcome to another video. This video is part 2 of how I prepared for my board exams. In part 1, I had shared a few study tips for English and math exam, and in this video, I'll be sharing a few study tips for science, SST, Hindi and IT. Let's get started. So for science, I watched a YouTube video. I started with the natural resources chapter because it is quite easy and also very important from exam point of view. After that, I practiced a few MCQs. The paper is subjective, but MCQs do help me revise the chapters. So after that, I started with chemistry, the fourth chapter, carbon and its compounds. Almost half of this chapter was deleted, so we just had like 1.5 chapter coming for the term 2 exam from chemistry. Okay, tip number 2. So whenever you're reading NCERT, make sure to go through the information given in the boxes and the tables. Also practice the diagrams that are given in NCERT because many of the questions might come directly from these. After completing the carbon and its compounds chapter, I revised the trends in the modern periodic table and also the next chapter for chemistry. I revised the 9th chapter from bio once again, and after that I watched a few marathon videos on YouTube, and these videos actually helped me to revise the entire portion that was coming for the term 2 exam, and it also made me a little more confident for the exam we had the next day. After that, I went through the formula sheet that I had made for physics, and then I went through the previous year questions because, as I had said in the part 1 video, that questions make me confident about any particular topic, and previous year questions also give you an idea in what way the questions are asked in the exam and in what way you're supposed to answer them. Okay, so the exam was really good. It was even better than what I had expected it to be, and all the questions from NCERT, no twisted questions. So the exam went great, but I made a silly mistake. There was a 2-marker questions and it had 3 parts to it, and I knew the first and the third part well. For the second one, I had to think what I had to write, so I just wrote the first one and left the question, and I thought that I would revisit it later. But in the end, I completely forgot that I had to revisit that question, and I submitted the paper. I couldn't even recheck because the time wasn't enough. So, very important tip number 3, make sure to complete your paper at least 5 to 10 minutes before so that you have time to recheck your paper and also see if you have attempted all the questions, or you might end up doing something like I did. Okay, so social studies is definitely one of my most favorite subjects. I love studying social sciences. Do let me know in the comments which is your favorite subject. So I started my SST preparation with history, and I read NCERT first because NCERT is very important. We just have one chapter coming from history, nationalism in India. This chapter is really long, but it is quite easy as well. Now, I've heard many people saying that don't read NCERT when your exam is in like 2 to 3 days. Just go through your notes and reference books and sample papers. But I would say that read NCERT every time, even on the day of your exam. I mean, before the day of your exam, because the questions that can come from NCERT might not be there in your reference book, might not be there on any websites, might not be there in the sample papers or previous year questions. But if it's there in NCERT, CBSE can surely ask it. I have also noticed this from the term 1 board exam. From the MCQ question bank that I had, a very few questions were asked, and when I googled the questions after the exam was done, there weren't many results on Google, but I found all the answers in NCRT. So the questions were directly asked from NCRT, even if they were not present in any reference book, sample papers, or Google. So tip number 4, don't even think of not reading or revising NCRT before your board exam. Okay, so after history and politics, I started with geography, and I also tried solving the exercises given in the textbook after reading the chapters. So we had like an online doubts plus revision session from school for 2 days, in which we discussed a few important questions and also revised the portion that was coming for the exam. So I went through a few previous year questions, and a night before the exam I also practiced the map work that was coming for the exam. Okay, so the exam was good. It wasn't the best, but it was good. The 3 markers and 5 markers were very easy. The case based questions were mostly like based on your understanding of the passage that was given. So I got set 3, and when I came home and I saw the other sets, they were easier than set 3. They were much more easier than set 3, but it's fine. I have written everything, now it depends on the examiner. For Hindi, again, I started by reading the NCRT textbook, the chapters, and the poems. Tip number 5, if you're doing a poem or a chapter in your class, or if you're learning it online, make sure to note down the difficult word meaning so that it becomes easier for you to understand the meaning of the chapter or the poem. For poems, you can also try writing the central idea or theme in your own words so that it becomes easier for you to understand, and also answer the questions that can come from the poem. So we just had 2 poems coming from Hindi for the term 2 exam. So I had written the meaning of the paragraphs in the poem. So I just read the poem once and went through the meaning of the paragraphs. So till the end of the year, I did not get the paperback copy of our second Hindi textbook. So I had to download the online PDF, and I had to read from the PDF itself. And the chapters in this textbook are so long. Like one chapter is almost 10 to 15 pages, which is a lot compared to the main textbook, because the main textbook has chapters for only 2 to 4 pages. I also had a reference book for Hindi which had the summary of the chapters, the NCRT solutions, and a few extra questions as well. So I went through the NCRT questions before the exam. The exam was amazing. I was a little scared for the writing section, but that was also really good. And guess what? I completed the paper before time, which I did not really expect, because we had 7 writing skills coming along with the literature question and answers, but I completed the paper and I also got time to recheck, which is amazing. And the best part is that I am done with all my major subject exams now, and I just have IT left, which is just for 25 marks, and we have 5 days for it, which is not really required. Like we had for other subjects, we also had a revision plus doubt session for IT, in which we discussed the CBSE sample paper and a few more sample papers. And then I revised the NCRT textbook for employability skills, and I also practiced a few questions available online. After completing the first chapter, I revised the green skills chapter. This was the second chapter that was coming from this textbook, and the chapters in this textbook are not very long and they're also very easy to remember. After that, I went through the chapters from the draft study material provided by CBSE. This textbook and also the previous textbooks, the employability skills one, were PDFs, but since I needed them for the entire year, I thought why not get them printed and spiral bound. So for all the subjects, I also went through the pre-board papers, and there were a few questions, like one or two questions from our pre-boards as well. The exam was amazing. It was really good, and I completed the paper almost 15 to 20 minutes before, and I also got time to recheck, which is amazing. All the questions in section B and C were from the CBSE draft study material itself, and I did find section A a little weird. It was like easy kind of weird, if that makes sense. There was a question named two elements of nature, and I was like, are we supposed to write air and water over here? And I just wrote air and water, and yes, obviously it was the correct answer. And when I came home, I realized that the questions in section A were asked from a completely different PDF. I don't really know if that PDF was provided by CBSE, but all the questions in section A were asked from that PDF, but it was kind of related to NCRT, so I was able to answer all of them. Done with all the exams, done with 10th grade, and I have learned a lot of new things this year, and I think that is what is important, right? More than your grades, more than your marks, the efforts that you put in, those early mornings, late nights, and the things that you learn is what matters and is what is more important than your marks. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys found it helpful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe.